truly exciting times, and we welcome all our distinguished guests. So thank you. With that, I'll turn it over to the Honorable Mayor Roosevelt.
Well, I'll declare this meeting of Hickory City Council open, and we have a quorum. So we can go any business that comes before this meeting that doesn't require previous advertising. I'll turn it over to Mr.
Thank you, Mayor. Today, both bodies will be receiving a presentation on proposed improvements that are being proposed to plan in Rotary-Geitner Park in partnership with the Rotary-Lackey family. And from a staff standpoint, we're excited to be here with where we always spend a lot of time from staff and Mr. Lackey and his family working, bringing us to this point. And just before I turn it over to Mr. Lackey, any comments that you'd like to the kind of process that what we want to see the outcome will be. What we're presenting to both the Park and Recreation Commission and City Council is the conceptual site, the final conceptual site plan for the proposed improvements at Geitner Rotary Park. And once those plans are presented to you, and I'll let Mr. Lackey introduce Tom Wall to Ms. Lackey's architectural plan. Once Tom goes through the conceptual plans, and at that time, once he finishes, there'll be an opportunity to ask any questions. Once that's done, what staff will ask of the Parks and Recreation Commission is for your consideration of the conceptual site plan as presented. So staff will ask you, for a recommendation, and your approval of that recommendation to the City Council and for their consideration and acceptance of the site plan today. The acceptance by both the Parks and Recreation Commission and City Council is required for the work to begin on that. After that's done, then I'll turn the meeting over to our Deputy City Attorney, Arnita Dula. So there's some agreements that staff has been working on between staff and the Lackey family, some agreements to bring everything together. There'll be no decision made on those. Those will come back at a later time. But we felt while we had both bodies together, we needed just to, on the broad range, just to share with you how those agreements look. So that's basically what we need is involved today. So with that being said, it is my esteemed honor to, I know Rob Lackey, Mr. Lackey, and Rob had been here before, about 18 months ago, presenting their vision, and their vision is slowly starting to, has developed to this point where they want to come back and present that to you. So with that, I'll stop and I'd like to introduce to you Robert Lackey. Mr. Lackey, the floor is your opening comments.
Thank you, sir. My voice is a little weak with all the pollen and stuff, so bear with me. And thank you very much, everyone, for allowing us to come and speak for a few minutes to the joint body. We have had an exciting 18 months since we came last time. We did a little sketch about this big. We said, we're going to go park with things. And since that time, we've all worked very hard. The city's been great. Ardita's driving us all crazy with all the privileges. In fact, she's going to spend 3 hours reading the contract to all of y'all this afternoon. No, she's not. But no, it's been a great process, and Tom Hickory, TSW out of the Club has been an excellent firm to work with on design, concept, and engineering, preliminary engineering for the park, and costing, and things like that. So we're very pleased to have him today to make a little more formal presentation of the concepts where they are today, talk a little bit about where that process will be in the future. But it has been a very tedious design process, and we've had to learn all about conservancies and how to run the park and how to, in conjunction with the city, become partners long term to continue to grow the park over the years to come, and we feel like we have some great plans to do that. Obviously, very excited about the integration of the new city walk initiative and how that's going to tie into more beautification of that area. Very excited about it. So, any questions you folks have before or after, please feel free to contact us. We have to answer any questions that we possibly can. We're feeling really great about where we are today. Very, very good. We thank you very much for giving us the time and energy. Max, Gary, and Marlita, very, very diligent, hard work, and a very good process. We all got along really great. And Marlita said she's going to get me the check this afternoon. That is part of the deal, right? Did I leave that out again? I didn't know. But anyway, we'll definitely hear more about it. Tom Walsh from TSW out of Atlanta. Excellent. Amazing job.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to make you all feel comfortable right off. This August I turned 65, so I just did the math, and I want you to know that I'm 4% of my life I lived in North Carolina. I started first grade in North Carolina in Camp Lejeune, and then finished 4th grade in Cherry Point. So you know what I was. I was a military brat, but loved North Carolina. Had a great time, or at least the memories that I have of North Carolina were great. And then went over to the next state, to South Carolina. So I was only there for 0.5%. So I'm more North Carolinian than South Carolinian. Also, one of the things that I'm so excited about this park, my life as a professional started in San Antonio, Texas, with one of the great architects of the last century, O'Neill Ford. And O'Neill Ford was a regionalist. And he believed, in 1975, he believed that we should design with the materials that were available to us. Now that's a big deal today, but back in 1975, we were going through this environmental movement, but this was something that Mr. Ford had practiced since he had started architecture back in the, I guess in the 30s at the time. So he was a great influence. As a matter of fact, he was my mentor for six years. And he really taught us how to lay the architecture and the landscape architecture on the land lightly and to be very sensitive to land because it was the most important asset that we're doing. And I can remember, it says some of these developers make me crazy because they see this extraordinarily beautiful piece of land and they chop all the trees down and they say, now make it beautiful. Well, that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to save it. So when we saw this park, it was just extraordinary. It's a beautiful piece of land and you all have something very much to be proud of. And having that lake view and the lake frontage. So when we started off this project, we met with the Lackey family. We went through a sort of a formal process of being selected, and we were fortunate to be selected. And then from that point, we met with all of the city staff and other officials. I think we met with the power companies and other companies so we could understand the nature of the project. So we really got ourselves into the land. So I've spent 4 or 5 times at the site. One day we came over here and sat at the picnic table and just designed for about 4 or 5 hours, another gentleman on it. So the piece of land that we're looking at is basically right here for the park, and then this is called the buffer piece, which the city will control from that point. So this is about, right now this is approximately, we have approximately 106 acres here that we calculated. This is about 30 acres, and the rest is about 60-some acres plus, so it adds up to about 106 acres. We divided this into 4 zones, and it was basically to look at these different zones and then look at the future expansion, and I'm going to get into these zones in a few minutes, and then the land that's not available at the moment, which is controlled by the city. I'm going to tell you now, we're looking north. I'm going to confuse you, and I'm going to turn the plans in a few minutes. So it's going to be facing west, but I'll take when we get there. So sorry, it's just what I say. Oh, we just got there. This is now north is over here. So this is north, east, west at the top. So basically, you come up on 12th Street, and we have the existing entry located here. And one of the main criteria was ultimately to add as much parking as we could add to this. There's currently about 40 spaces. we wanted to get as many as 130, and with valet parking, 160, 170 cars. So if an event occurs, you can park it within the site. So we looked at this area. We came up with a canoe and kayak dock with motorboats that can park here, but it's only a launch for canoe and kayaks. And I was fortunate I designed the kayak and canoe venue for the Olympics in '96, and I just finished a $40 million growing venue in Sarasota, Florida. So this is a nice little piece that people can just drop their boats in and use the lake. The other cool thing about this site is that you have this wonderful stream that comes down and runs parallel to 12. And one of the thought processes we went through this design is you have this high point, all the water's coming down through here, and ultimately it ends back in Hickory Lake. And at the point it's closed here, this is a closed ditch at this point. And the thought process was, boy, this could be a teaching moment for a lot of the children that come here, because we could show them how water filters from the high point down into the small bio stream, and then how water filters through and then enters. And we decided we try to daylight this back into the lake. So to me, it's a great teaching moment. It's a wonderful way to see how ecology works. So we wanted to think about, let's show this, how this all works from a green standpoint. So we have this, an exit out, and we have 21 spaces. We then had a larger for overflow parking. So the parking actually is some sort of grass, reinforced grass. And we have another 55 there. And then we have about, actually that 37 is off, we have about 45 spaces located in the main parking that has a drop-off for what we're calling the lake house and then the conservancy, and I'll talk about that in a minute, as at the high point of this part of the site. There's other higher points, but this is one of the high points, and I'll get into that a little bit. But the lake house, where the existing building is basically right now. We have the existing pass system that we're going to plug into that starts at the lake house. And then I think what we really, another exciting moment here is how do we get from the lake house up to the conservancy? So we have an elevator, but we also have a canopy walk that you'll see a sketch of in a second that goes to the conservancy and back. So it's a very compact site. With one more element, I'm sorry, but we have the family shelter playground located here. So we have three types of docks. We have a boat dock, we have a fishing dock, and this is really an event dock that I'm going to again talk about in a second as we go further into the site. So again, we broke this into 4 zones, and basically we broke into zones as really for a pricing exercise that we went through. We wanted to see what the cost ultimately might be, and I got to tell you, it's very early stages. It's hard to cost up in a conceptual stage, but we try to do our best. So we use this as a method to do that. This is a perspective looking from the lake back to the lake house, the amphitheater that we have with the event dock, the conservancy at the high point, the bridge that comes in and connects into it. And you can get through these, we walked this a number of times through these little wonderful trails that can get you back up to this point. There's a phenomenal swale that comes down through here. Again, another teaching moment, what lives in these swales that is so neat to have that adjacency with the conservancy. And then all the parking and so forth. One of the things I always try to do is, when I think about parks, is you come and park, because in this case this park is more a vehicular, you have to go in a car. But once you get out of the car, you want the pedestrian to be free of that. And so that's what we really try to work on, is once you get out of the car, you're now in the park and enjoy the park amenities. So we're going to quickly look at 3 different areas on this. Oops. So this is the kayak and canoe parking lot. And what it does is it has about 21 spaces, I think I just said, and then off of 12th Street. And then you have a nice little bridge, and we have the bias swale, and then this opening back up into Hickory Lake. Right now it's covered with a pipe, so really give much more of a natural feel to the whole area. And so you can walk across this bridge over to the family picnic area and playground, as well as boat dock. So this is basically for day use for the kayakers, and then at night, and if there's an event, this could be used probably more for the valet parking. Then you have that middle area, which is the playground. You have a sort of a boardwalk right along the edge of the lake here. You have the fishing dock. You have the play area. You have some outdoor restrooms located here. And then you have the main grand entry into the lake house right here. Just as an off note, I was in Sulphur Springs, Texas last week, and this town, this amazing story of what they were 7 years ago and what they're today. But they become very famous because they have 2 outdoor glass bathrooms, and you can't see in, but you can see out. And so I have all these pictures of people trying to look in, and they've been on national, worldwide TV. They got these things made out of Germany, and the only mistake they made when they first put them in is that at night, when you turn the lights on inside, you could see inside, but you couldn't see out. So they had to put lights on the outside. They caught them off guard, these Texans, but it was a wonderful little thing. The lake house, I'm going to get into more detail about the lake house, but what we really wanted to do was have a formal processional entry into it. And you'll see in the images, one of the things that we really focused on was indoor-outdoor relationship, making this as transparent so you could use both spaces and they'd feel as comfortable together. So you'll see that in a second. This building is just full of light. And then we have a small amphitheater with an event dock out here. We did this, I've been working on Piedmont Park in Atlanta since 1993. And this is a much larger dock than they have for event dock. And they've had weddings and they've had Shakespeare plays on it. So we're very comfortable that this could work. And it have all sorts of electrical hookups and all the things that you need for an event. You actually could have a backstage back here for dressing rooms and so forth. And it's all temporary stuff that you use to put up. So this is the first image that we had drawn of the lake house with the elevator and stairs going up to the canopy bridge. And the canopy bridge, again, it's all about the ecosystem. Now you go up and you're in the canopies of trees, and there's a lot to learn about what life exists up there, natural life. So I think it's kind of cool that we can show all these, the water all the way up to the canopies of the trees. One of the things we would love to see is some cisterns. So again, we're capturing water and maybe reusing it for irrigation if we wanted to use that, but we're using it naturally again. All sorts of things we're thinking, but you can see that this is all a lot of glass here. So, and you can see right through to the other side, which is the back patio. So we're just looking at this side. You're looking through. We have a large meeting room, a small meeting room, and a warming kitchen. It's not a full kitchen, it's just a warming kitchen for catering and so forth, with restrooms and office. And what I think Jerry Spangler, my partner, designed this, and I think he's done a great job. And then it has this wonderful event space that we can open out to. And so those rooms that in that outdoor-indoor relationship, it can just spill out onto this patio looking down onto the event space. And this is some images of it. This is a day shot, and that's the night shot. But what I really like about this too is that instead of this canopy going down, it comes up. It just invites you into the space. And again, we're thinking about using all natural materials for this. If there's indigenous stone, again, we've not had time to research that, but if there was indigenous stone in this area, that'd be great to use woods and so forth for this building. The Conservancy, which is, again, one of the high points, great views out over the lake. The swell that I was talking about occurs over here and drops off. There's a fairly significant drop off at this point, so you can access it. And every once in a while, we might need cars up there, so we have this little turnaround and a turnaround at the other point with reinforced edging. Grass edging, just as we have the overflow parking. And then we have 2 outdoor spaces, one a small observational deck looking out over the lake, and then this other patio area. And again, this is sort of coming from the canopy bridge over to the lake, and again, we're using that same type of roofing structure that invites you into the space and complements the building at the lower end. And again, this is basically outdoor. The conservancy is on the inside, the outdoor patio, and then this deck overlooking that. So that's sort of the entry from the west side. And, south side, so there it is. And then this is the back side, and this actually falls off a little more steeper. We didn't get that into this sketch, but you can see that's observation deck, and then this is glass conservancy located right here. So finally, the schedule that we're looking at is hopefully sometime this summer we get started on the project, and at that point we're looking at about a month with master plan and schematic design finishing up, going into design development about 3 months, construction documents 3 months, and hopefully if this is a fairly aggressive schedule, we could be finished, or a lot of this project could be finished by 17. So that's it. Are we supposed to ask for questions? Any questions?
Well, first, thank you.
What is the capacity of some of those meetings?
See, I was doing my homework, but I probably didn't do my homework. Let me go back and see what. Let's see, 100. This is 100 seats right here. The small is 20 to 25 seats, and the patio is 100 seats. So you can get as many as 300 people into this space right here.
Was there any goal of having outdoor events?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah, let me go back to the. Yeah, this was the whole thought process was that again talking about that indoor-outdoor relationship. That this is the outdoor patio. We have this amphitheater, so you can have this, and then you have this staging area. And they really, when you're on the front side of this building, right here, and you look through, you can see all the way down to this, because it's a very transparent building on this side of the building. So it really is a very special area that you could have and utilize this whole space for a special event.
Again, what is the capacity?
About 300 sitting.
Well, the amphitheater, that's.
The amphitheater.
That's the building and patio, covered patio, it's about 300. And that's with banquet style seating. That's not like we're doing here, like just chairs on the wedding set up. It would probably totally accommodate 5.
Yeah. And the amphitheater is about 400 to 500 people.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
That staff is prepared to recommend to the Parks and Recreation Commission acceptance of the conceptual site plan as presented. We recommend your consideration and acceptance of that, and your consideration of forwarding that on to City Council for their consideration. So, Mr. Chair, Parks and Recreation staff recommends acceptance of the conceptual site plan as presented.
With that recommendation,
I'm sorry, could I do that?
Yes, sir.
And Mrs. Dooley was going to add?
Afterwards, yes, sir.
with that recommendation, I have a motion from the Parks and Rec Commission to accept conceptual site plan as presented.
I make the motion.
May I have a second?
Wait, yeah, so
Motion.
Dave,
Who made the motion? Joyce.
May I have a second? All in favor?
Dave Crosby, Dave Crosby.
Yes, you can.
Now all in favor? Any opposed?
I would now ask if city council, someone in city council would like to make a motion or institute discussion tonight.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Motion by Patton, second by Meisner. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. Mr. Zagaroli and Mr. Lael are not there.
As I stated earlier in my opening remarks, that by accepting that gives the Lackey Manor the approval to proceed with that. Along with the concession plan, there are a lot of agreements that need still being worked through between the city and Mr. Lackey. And at this time, we felt it was, it was important we come and share kind of a broad range of what these agreements are. So with that, this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our deputy city attorney, Arlene Gould, and she'll talk with you about the agreements that will eventually be in place for the project. So Nate, I'll turn that over.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Lackey is right. I probably have been driven crazy, but that's what they pay me the big bucks for. This project is the magnitude and the nature of it is such that it deserves the attention that we're giving it, because this is going to be spectacular and something we hope will serve as a model perhaps for other projects within the city. So we're working really hard to try to craft some agreements that will allow us to move forward and hopefully very soon see this come to fruition. For just purposes of this slide, I refer to it as the Waterfront Memorial Park. You know, the previous slide was referred to as the DEIDRA Lackey Memorial Park. So there's no distinction there, really. I just used it for the purposes of this discussion. What I'm going to just talk to you very briefly about, or just give some broad concepts for the agreements. They are very, very detailed. We're still working on them. And so it would take a long time to go through word by word. So I'm going to just give you a broad overview. First of all, there will be a grant construction easement agreement, which will, of course, delve into development and construction of the park. And the purpose of it, of course, is to memorialize Mr. Lackey's late wife, DEIDRA Lackey. Here are the areas, the basic areas that the agreement will cover. Of course, there will be an overview of the project. Then the agreement would outline or set out the responsibilities and rights and obligations of both parties, the city as well as the developer, Mr. Lackey. Finally, the last two discusses the facilities ownership. The city, of course, owns the property and will own the facilities as they're being constructed. And last, of course, we have to set out, as I think Mac refers to it as the legal mumbo jumbo, or is it gobbledygook? Bonds and insurance, those little technicalities as to how's this property going to be protected, how's it insured, that kind of thing. So that is one of the agreements that we have been working on. The second one, the Conservancy, and I think you've heard Mr. Lackey as well as Mr. Walsh. Oh, your Robert Lackey family, also known as Tom Walsh. Refer to the Conservancy very briefly. And just to make a distinction, there is a difference between the Conservancy and the Conservatory. The Conservatory is the building. The Conservancy is actually going to be a nonprofit group that will be created that will help operate and manage and maintain the facilities that are constructed. And this is in a partnership. This agreement covers the creation of the Conservancy. The group will be formed and it will have a board of directors with representatives from both parties, meaning some city representatives are appointed by city council, and also representatives that will be initially selected by Mr. Lackey, the Lackey family. It also covers the development of the gardens, and the gardens includes the facilities that were discussed and presented to you, as well as the landscape areas. That whole thing is referred to as the gardens. It also talks about the adjacent park areas and any future expansion of the project. There was a reference to the buffer area and the expansion area. And so the agreement touches upon that and gives direction and provisions which will allow for future expansion. And finally, the term of the agreement, basically how long is it going to last? What is the length of the agreement? And finally, we're also working on a burial site agreement. As has already been stated, the purpose of the gardens in the park is to memorialize Mrs. Lackey. Therefore, there will be a burial agreement which will govern the construction of burial sites. The majority of those sites will be located inside the conservatory, and some will be located in certain adjacent garden areas. Those sites will be for the use of the extended Lackey family. Next steps. This just boils it down. You've already seen a proposed timeline for the construction. And these are some of the next steps that we're looking to follow. Of course, we're agreeing upon the language. I think we're almost there. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's not a train. It's really light. And of course, the creation of the conservancy and the board members will be appointed. The engineering documents, will, of course, are being prepared or will be prepared and submitted for review and approval. Execution of the agreements, and then, of course, construction begins. And so, again, this is a very exciting process, and we all work very long and hard, staff, as well as the Lackey family and all of his representatives, the architects and others, to try to create something wonderful, and again, that will capture all that the project is meant to be, put it on paper, in writing. I will entertain any questions you may have about any of the agreements or anything in general about the agreements.
Will the city maintain the burial site like I in regular cemeteries, or is it going to be like different?
No, they will be maintained in accordance with the rules and regulations as the other cemeteries. And of course, they said that they're being located in the building, that encompasses part of the maintenance of the building as well. Any other questions?
Just maybe a comment in terms of next steps. So from a staff level, we've anticipated either at a city council meeting or at a separate workshop actually going through the agreements with you all. We recognize that this joint meeting wasn't the appropriate place to turn pages and go line by line through them, but we did want to provide council that opportunity to look at all the agreements. And as Ms. Dula mentioned, they're not completely done yet because it has gotten very complex. It's been 18 months of almost weekly conversations with Mr. Lackey and his attorney, and but we think we're now, as she mentioned, there in the short rows. But just want to make sure council understood we're not going to bring these agreements to you next for action until you've had a chance to really look at them and go through them, and she can go in much more detail and explain them.
And we will have a public hearing for public input before approving the contract.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Well, the questions, I think it's very exciting. This is kind of like a spark that's going to ignite the whole pond explosion of what we're trying to do here in Hickory.
And the timing is very good.
Yeah, that's
because we are working somewhat slowly by many people's standards on the bond proceeds use, but this will take place during the time that that's going on. So I think people will be very interested in this, and I hope we can have an out-of-the-way place that doesn't interfere with construction, can have some of these on display for the sidewalk superintendents to look at.
All of our quality control engineers, we got 40,000.
Plus some from other counties.
Yeah.
Mr. Lackey, any closing comments? anything you want?
No, just thank you again for the additional vote of confidence. Continue to move forward. Process.
Well, I want to thank the Lackeys for their vision and their commitment to this community. There aren't many places that will have something like this. There will be a lot of buzz about it all across the state of North Carolina. It's a nice visible area because so many people go across 321 every day. And as we develop from the bond referendum proceeds, as we develop that area more, I just can't imagine a more perfect way to present to the public that we in Hickory craft things right. And we want to do this in a manner that gives that impression to 40,000 or 50,000 people a day. So let's have a hand of applause for the Lackeys.
Well, thank you, that's exciting. On behalf of the Parks Recreation Commission, may I have a motion to adjourn this exciting meeting? David, make a motion to adjourn. May I have a second? Lloyd, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no.
And I'll ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Hickory City Council.
So moved.
Motion by Patton, second by Seaver. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That's unanimous. Thank you all.